Hello and welcome back to the Handstandcast with me, Emmet Lewis, and my host, Mikael Christiansen. I suppose, how's things going, Mikael?
Yeah, same as last time. Not much news.
Not much
Training,
news.
folding paper. Then training more, folding more paper, having a cup
Yeah.
of coffee,
You're doing pretty
etc.
good with what you're folding. Mikael, you will probably see it on his Instagram at some point. He is folding, I don't know what it's meant to be. It kind of basically looks like something from Dragon Ball Z, but with a spear.
Yeah, I really wonder what it is. So basically, it's like I came across this model from there is a Scottish origami guy who sent it to me because he knows I like the humanoid models, and it's a Chinese designer. Who is obviously super talented, but I had never heard of this guy before. And yeah, I don't even know what this model is. There is only one picture on the internet of the actual model, which means that I am reconstructing it from like the crease pattern, which is like this big square full of all the lines where that you use for describing a model, sort of. You could kind of like you could how to say compare the crease pattern with kind of a note sheet of music. You need to be able to read it to see.
I think Mikael showed me the crease pattern for this model. And what he says, a 96 by 96 grid with all these random diagonals on it. And I reckon if you shook it too fast in front of someone's face or spun it round, they would have some kind of seizure in response to that kind of like level of density in there.
Yeah, it's kind of rough, this one, but it's super fun, and I'm actually figuring it out, which is great. So I've basically been sitting with that all day. How about you?
I have not been doing that. I've actually been working on my leatherwork. I'm quite happy with my Cthulhu bag. Because,
yeah, you showed me that. I haven't actually seen you much of
I haven't
it.
finished it yet. I've only kind of got all the panels done. It's like, just look how wholesome we are. We're locked down during the Rona and doing arts and crafts.
Yeah, I'm not really locked down though in Sweden, but still spending all my time folding a fucking thing. So hey,
Maybe you should be locked down.
yeah, maybe I should.
Anyway, let's I suppose get on. We are on one of our mini-sodes, which means it is our time for our listeners' questions.
Yes.
As usual, if you want to ask us any questions about any aspect of hand balance, your own personal training, whatever, just you can DM them to us on social media. You can send them to Handstand Factory as well. We have a contact form on the website as well. And also, if you have ideas for episodes as well, something we mightn't have covered, shoot them over and we'll see what we do. If we use your idea, we're not going to credit you because let's face it, good ideas aren't made, they're stolen. But deep down inside, we'll feel bad about stealing your idea and presenting it as our own. Right, first question. This is one of those complicated but simple answer ones. How do I know where I'm at in my handstand progression strength-wise?
That's a very unspecific question, I guess. Where you are in your progression, that's like, unless we know your specific training and your kind of who you are, how long you've trained, what you're doing, and so on, it's really hard to know where you're at strength-wise, since that will depend on where you were yesterday and so on.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things like there's no grading, there's no set things in handstand other than like if you can't press, you're weak. So
Exactly.
it's very binary. If you can't press, you're weak. If you can't stolder, you're not a person. And once you can't stolder, you claim your own name, and that's when you're like, we'll be like, his name was Robert Paulson.
Exactly.
But until that point, you just have no name. You're just a blank in Project Mayhem. The main thing you want to be concerned with, I suppose, is
we need to dig further into this hand balancing / Project Mayhem Fight Club metaphor. But
instead of soap, we'll sell handstand blocks and
or like soap handstand blocks. That's made from liposuction clinics.
Yeah, and antibacterial as well, so your hands don't get the Rona off the floor.
Yeah, but to slightly return to the question, yeah, like it's there isn't really any direct progression curve with handstands, such as it is with weightlifting. Like if you can lift 60, then you put on another more weight, and then you lift 62 and a half, and so on and so on. Like here, it's kind of It's more complicated than that, and like the how to say, the levels are kind of more dependent on kind of the guidelines than that you must be able to do A before you move on to B. But I would say, speaking directly strength-wise for handstand, like a lot of things aren't really about strength either. They're about building the strength you need and then like making it more efficient and so on. But yeah, it's basically one of the type of questions that it's too hard to answer directly, since there's a lot of specific information that would be needed to be known to say anything about a person like that.
Yeah, I think the main thing to concern yourself about is, are you getting better and are you having fun?
Yeah.
Do you feel like you're progressing your practice over the short, medium, the long term? If you are, then you are getting stronger in our weird thing. But understanding, like, yeah, it's like there's no real way to know other than just like, you know, keep track of what you're doing and make sure it's getting better.
Yep.
Particularly at beginner stage, like that's the only phase when you can be really quite linear in your progress. Like, okay, I'm doing chest to wall, I'm doing 30 seconds, and then next week I'm doing sets of 35 to 40 seconds. Yeah. Okay, you're increasing. But once you get past into the intermediate zone, like obviously reps on presses and handstand push-ups count, but I don't know. It's like
there's a lot about the quality work too. Like,
yeah,
I was spoken about before. Like, let's say, oh, I suddenly can only stand 35 seconds, and last week I could stay 40. Yeah, but maybe you actually improved on other measures, which like count as well towards progression. So yeah, it's a complicated picture.
I know. If only you could measure art in sets and reps. We're gonna do 4 sets of art, and then 1 set of movement quality.
But hey, like, yeah, but I mean, that's really great contemporary art. I mean, we could make that. You could easily like apply to like an art academy with that. You're going to make sets and reps of art. That sounds perfect. That's like
super complete 4 canvases.
Yeah, it's super contemporary. 4 sets of art.
Cool. So our next question. So 9. How did you guys meet and decide to collaborate on these programs?
Did the internet die here now?
No, I still have you.
Oh, you still have me? Okay. Oh, fine, fair enough.
Did I die?
No, did you say anything?
Oh, yes. I'll read the question again for you. Isaac, maybe leave this, or maybe not. Maybe we'll just leave in our mistakes, because this is how we roll. 1 take every time. The whole of Handstand Factory was actually filmed in just 1 take.
And then Isaac had to cut out tons of shit.
It's just rolling on camera for days. There's only 1 angle as well. I know it looks like that, but it's no, it's just 1 angle. All right, anyway. How did you guys meet and decide to collaborate on these programs?
I guess it was that first time when you came to Fight Club, and I was like, if this is your first night at Fight Club, you have to fight. And then like you got knocked out and all that shit, and then like next time you beat the shit out of that guy. And
you're not meant to talk about that.
Well, yeah, well, how was it? First we had a little bit of contact online on in the glory days of the Gymnastic Bodies forum, didn't we? Like back when it was an actual place.
Mikael was chief shit poster there. I was kind of posting a little bit, but not really. Back when it was amazing. Back when we had Yuri, we had Ido, we had a few other people I can't remember. Mikael, me, yeah. Coach Summer hadn't gone weird, and yeah, it was a great time for the internet. Great time for all these kind of sharing things. But I knew Mikael had just started circus school, I think, when I was kind of near the end. But I spotted him and I was like, oh, this guy knows what he's doing. He's pretty cool. He's was having this kind of eager, trying to figure out possibly in that egotistical 20-year-old way of, I can find a better way to do this than what my coaches say. Which sometimes it turns out you can. But he kind of had that inquisitiveness that I was like, okay, this guy wants to understand it and isn't an asshole. So I was like, okay, put him down on my radar as someone I wanted to meet. And then a few years later, possibly many years later at that stage.
Yeah, it was many years, maybe like 5 years or so later.
Yeah, 5-6 years later, something like that. Mikael was teaching in Berlin, and I wasn't even really training that much handstands at the time. What was I training? I can't really remember what I was training at the time.
You guys were living in Berlin then, yeah?
Yeah, we were living in Berlin, and we were just like, I was doing the workshop, so it was like, okay, I know this guy online, let's go give him some money, and hopefully the workshop will be good. So we gave him some money, and the workshop was very good. It was a very good workshop. So I was like, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. I was like, came out of my handstand retirement. He complimented me on my shoulders. I was like, thank you.
Yeah, you had a good
Anyone who
height
compliments my
there,
shoulders.
Yeah,
Very good.
Anyone who compliments my shoulders gets a thumbs up. And we kind of got chatting after that. I can't even remember. Did we go drinking? No, we didn't go drinking. So
No, we didn't go for a drink then, but
did we go for dinner at all, or?
dinner I think we did.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the Handstand Factory thing came a few years later when we were just chit-chatting about like various teaching methods and like the teaching online, and both of us had done like coaching both in person and online, and yeah, we just thought that like fuck it, if like there was quite a lot of material about like teaching handstands online, but I mean there was various quality, and there was at least none that we kind of were in full agreement with, and especially when it came to kind of the one arm stuff, there was very little out there. So we decided that like, yeah, why not we make it ourselves?
Yeah, I can't remember where we were. We'd met up somewhere along the time. I think we were both, Motion Impulse was organizing both our workshops at that stage. We'd met up somewhere, and I don't know, I can't remember you saying the phrase. I can't remember where we were, and I think I'd really like to track it down. But we were doing our favorite pastime of ripping on this one particular one-arm handstand program that is online, and we remain nameless. But Mikael has finally said just one point is like, you know, instead of just criticizing this, we should just make something better. And then that was just like, yeah, that just makes sense. Like, fuck bitching about something, make something better. So there's a moral to the story. If you're bitching about shit, just make something better or shut up. Either way, your life will be better. So then we're like, okay, fine, let's fuck it. Let's make a film or film a program. So we were kind of in accord of our handstand teaching and various little bits and pieces. So we came up with, so it took about a year after this point to actually get something together.
Yeah.
We decided that the programs, we wanted to make them, it's like we could have just filmed something on an iPhone and just put it out as a program, and people would have been like, oh, that's a good program. The information was fine, but it was, we wanted to get like a proper film crew, proper editing, get a website, get all these things. It was a very big learning experience for all of us along the way. So we got all that, and yeah, here we are now filming even more programs and gonna hopefully have a textbook on handstands at some point.
That's kind of the plan.
Oh.
Yeah,
So,
I guess that's kind of sums it up. And now we're sitting here talking nonsense to you guys and using Fight Club analogies.
Yeah. What more do you want? Your first rule of Handstand Club is you tell everyone about Handstand Club. Okay, so this one, next question coming up is really cool. We have an audio question. So if you want to hear your voice on the radio, is this radio? On the podcast-io? Whatever it is, really. If you go to our Anchor FM, you can anchor.fm and find us. You can leave us a call in. I guarantee you, if you leave a call in, we will play it. If you send us questions, sometimes we get a lot of the same questions, so we'll just group them together. You mightn't hear your words, but your question will be answered. But like the audio ones, for the moment, until we get thousands of them, we will play them. So let us pause now, and I will play this.
Hey Mikael, hey Emmet, how you guys going? My name is Kwok from Brisbane, Australia. Loving you guys' podcast. I really appreciate your sharing your knowledge and experience on the handstand practice. Loving the sarcastic humor, by the way, so keep that going. My question was about opening the shoulders. In your last podcast, you talked about press to handstand, and I was one of those guys that do that mini planche to handstand, and I've been doing that for a while. So I feel like when I get up into handstand, my shoulders don't open up because I'm so used to doing that planche lean to the handstand. So any drills and tips to help with my alignment when I'm in the handstand, particularly focusing on opening the shoulders. I can hold I can hold the handstand for about 20 seconds, but the shoulders struggle to open up, and I'm struggling to create that nice straight alignment. Any tips and drills would help. Thank you.
Cool. So we had Kwok from Brisbane. Hopefully he hasn't gone bored of the podcast and still listening in. So his question is basically there's two parts to this question. Is like, he's got this planchy type of press to handstand, and when he ends up from planching from this, the planche press kind of type, he ends up with very close shoulders, and his line isn't super straight. So they're kind of related in some ways, these questions. And the other bit is just like, well, how do we straighten it out? So I suppose it's a part one.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite common with the... I mean, if you planche your press, it means that you are basically moving your center of mass over the hands by simply like closing the shoulder angle a lot as you lean forwards. And then what very often happens is that like you will pull the heels up and you will keep the shoulders in front of the hands until you reach the handstand position. And when you then reach the handstand position, your shoulders will likely still be slightly in front of your hands. And so basically the planche press is kind of executed in the muscularly similar to if you just grab a dumbbell and you just with a straight arm lift it forwards and up over your head. That is the kind of pressure you exert. And if you do that with a dumbbell, you will notice that you won't really use your trapezius in any way. Like you will lift the dumbbell in front of you, like it'll be heavy in the biceps and the delts and so on. And when your arm reaches an overhead position, there's no specific reason for your trapezius to be flexed at that point. So then you will have to push with your trapezius to then actually get kind of on top of them and be using them. So that is kind of the issue that very often happens with this kind of press, is that you just lift it through, you end up in a handstand, but you're not at all kind of using the muscles that are by definition effectively stacking you. While in a kind of quote unquote proper press, the first thing you do is activate your trapezius as you lean forwards, so that you flex you use your trapezius and push as high as you can, then lean onto your hands, which then minimizes the lean. You press up and then you end up in a less planched position. But if this is your press, I mean, it is what it is at the moment. You should work on it, you should work on your mobility and so on. But when you reach the handstand position, make sure that you press through your trapezius and that you flex the shoulders extra, because it won't be a intuitive thing to do when you reach such a handstand position. It's either bananaed or it's kind of like still sort of like diagonal planchy, I would say.
Yeah, I think one of the other things just adding this is just work the tuck handstand more. Like, make your goal. You're doing 20-second handstands, he says. You know, aim to be able to do a 30-second closed tuck handstand. And it'll fix a lot of shoulder alignment issues. Because you can only, like, it's pure shoulder flexion strength, which is our active side of the shoulder flexibility for handstand.
My
you
internet
can get
has
that,
fallen out
just
here.
keep forcing. It's always this idea of intent,
Emmet
I think,
has
in a lot of
fallen
these
out.
stretches. Particularly with the active flexibility stuff, it's like, I'll get my shoulders elevated, my traps engaged, pushing up as high as I can. And then I'll just keep forcing it as best we can. And this is the idea of keeping just keep going with it. And tuck wall slides, anything tuck handstand, basically. That's the key.
Tuck handstands win.
Yeah, tuck life. Hashtag bitches. Right. And where's my questions gone? So, more audio questions. That was cool. Here we go. Am I a bad person if I train side splits with toes pointing upwards instead of feet on ground? The answer is you are a bad person, but it has nothing to do with your side split variation of choice.
Remember, it has to do with whether or not you can stall the press.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what was your quote from your student recently?
What was it? Something along the lines that she, what was it she said? That the press to handstand was the metric with which she valued herself as a person. It was obviously a joke, people, so don't take it too literally.
No, take it literally. I don't know, maybe it is. Who knows? There's a lot of people get very obsessed with these movements.
The only metric,
anyway,
rage.
The side split pointing upwards instead of feet in the ground. No, I think there's the kind of thing we have to clear up on the side split is the side split. If we were just look at the bone level, there's only really one way we can move the pelvis and femurs in a way that they'll get this side split line. And all that happens is if we imagine we don't do anything with the lower legs and we just keep them. If you're doing feet on the ground, if you look at the angles of people's ankles when they're doing a side split with the feet in the ground, they're generally quite contorted and inverted in. And that's what kind of allows them to keep their feet flat on the ground. Some people are quite flexible in this zone, have a lot of range of motion. It's very easy for them. Other people, and I say most people, actually have to spend a decent amount of time stretching this zone. And it also can be one of these, the reason I get called the splits wizard sometimes is because I understand the techniques of these things. And I'll have someone come to me for a one-off on side splits or something like this. And I'll see that they're trying to keep their feet flat on the ground and they just can't get past a certain point. And I say, lo and behold, my wizardry, roll your feet onto the inside or get your toes off the ground and look what happened. And suddenly they'll drop 15, 20, 30 degrees. I've seen some very big drops on this just because of this side of the ankle is a limitation. And then suddenly they're like, instant gain of ROM. It's like, oh my God, you're Gandalf. And I'm just like, no, it's just technique. That's all it is. It's technique. Any advanced technology appears like magic. And so you can create these limitations for yourself. Whereas if you just go, okay, I'll do my side split and I'll just do whatever you want with the feet. When it gets flat, then you can choose and go, oh, I want to be able to toes up, or I want to be able to toes down or toes pointed. Whatever's comfortable. One thing just is like when we change the angulation, obviously it changes which muscles are loaded. If we have toes up, it's a bit more hamstring in terms of like the loading onto the muscles by the vector. And if you just keep the feet forward, it is a bit more adductor magnus and short adductors and stuff like this. So there is a bit of that, and depending on where you're tight, it can be beneficial to train one variation and that will unlock the other one for you. So there's a few things in there, but you're not a bad person if you can press.
Yeah, let's keep it at
that. Cool. So our last question for the podcast this evening. I think I've only heard you mention yoga once in episode 1, and they/you referred to it as the Y word. Is yoga evil? I've come to handstands from yoga. Interestingly, my yoga teacher doesn't seem keen on my current passion and believes that I should be getting my shoulder mobility up to scratch before doing many handstands and crow pose. He seems to be concerned that I will lock in the stiffness if I increase my shoulder strength without getting the mobility in place first. I'm continuing my handstand passion because it is a desire to handstand that was driving me to finally sort out my shoulder mobility, but I'm interested in your thoughts. Mobility first or just do it? So a bit of a two-parter. I'll address the first one because it was me saying the Y word. And it was actually a bit of bait to yogis to see who would kick up a fuss. And it was, let's just clear it up. It's just a tongue-in-cheek comment because whenever I'm training in park or being with a girlfriend or training or just hanging out or meeting all the circus people we know and we're doing some training, it's basically like if someone comes over and goes, oh, you're so flexible or you can do handstands, and the next word out of their mouth is like, oh, you must do so much yoga to get like that. And I'm like, no, we do circus, we do acrobatics, that's what we do. And they're like, no. And it's a bit of a trope, like if you do circus. I don't know how it is in Sweden. I suppose people probably don't speak to you in Sweden in public.
No.
But if they did, they're probably looking at you going like, oh, there's Mikael, he's really good at yoga. So it's just it was just a bit of play on that, a bit of fun and a bit of gentle ribbing. No harm intended, or a little bit. I intended to bruise your pride, just a small amount. But no, so that's the Y word. It's just circus people being called yoga performers. I happen to have it on here's a funny one just to digress into the yoga world. So a very big yoga brand, which will remain unnameless because I don't want to risk getting sued. But they used to hire circus performers to perform in their shops, contortionists and hand balancers and other things, just to demonstrate the equipment and stuff like that. And people were like, oh my God, you must do so much yoga. You can sit on your own head. Mikael's currently working on this skill, by the way.
What did you say?
The sit on your head skill.
Yeah, but like to address that thing about handstands of course are used in yoga to some degree, and like various of the other like arm balances as well, and that's totally fine. I think that like there is just within these various contexts of physical practice or any practice really, they are systematized, and then we tend to create these concepts and what I call myths regarding various parts of the practices. And this doesn't just apply to yoga, it applies to circus, dance. I've been quite observant of these things through the years because of my anthropology background. That's where they use the words myth for those kind of concepts. But essentially what I mean is like, what, for example, your yoga teacher told you that you must not do this because it'll, what did you say, lock into stiffness. Like, what kind of, like, if you look at that, what kind of assumption is that? That is an assumption that if you do this practice without your body being quote unquote perfect for it, you will somehow harm your structure and your body. Now, first of all, a handstand is an artificial idea, as we've talked about before. The old school circus performers and gymnasts used to do banana back handstand. They were not injured or destroyed because of that. The body adapts to what you give it. So you can perfectly fine load your body and do these things without your mobility being a problem, up to a degree, of course. If you try to do some crazy moves on very high level and you lack mobility, yes, then you might hurt yourself. But for example, a crow, there isn't really much of a mobility component to a crow except being able to flex your wrist enough to put the weight on them. So I think just be aware of this, that, and like, that is not ripping on yoga at all, but this is just a very typical thing that I've heard in many fields. Like, there was, for example, a professional dancer, a choreographer, very, very skilled and like very great within her field, very well respected, that she saw our presentations in circus school, and she saw me do my handstands, and then she gave feedback to everyone. And when she came to me, she was like, yeah, but when you stand on one arm, your elbow is moving, she said. I'm like, yeah, it does, because that's how you balance on one arm. She's like, no, but that can't be good for the joint, she said. I'm like, what do you mean? No, like, you just in dance, like hyperextended knees aren't good and you will get hurt. And I'm like, this is what they all do. And like, it actually became a discussion where she basically extrapolated her idea of dancers jumping on hyperextended legs onto what I was doing. And yeah, maybe that's like, dancers can get injured from hyperextended legs, but as with most things, it's about load versus tolerance. So if your body can handle it, then it can handle it. While if you do too much too early or so on, you can get injured. So it's more about that than these very specific things that you must or must not do. Like, these things we do are things we've come up with. They're ideas, they're concepts, they're fun to do, but like, on average, unless you try to do something crazy, super hardcore, you're most likely not going to lock yourself into any stiffness or get injured. So yeah, that's my spiel on that, I would say. You have anything to add, Emmet?
Yeah, I think it's just one of these things. It comes down to I like the myth idea you kind of presented, because it occurs everywhere. Like, you know, you can see stretching, you know, like you see these bad studies on stretching, where it's like, they make people stretch and then immediately attempt a 1RM squat, and they're like, oh, your power's gone down, or all these kind of things. And then it's like, it extrapolates to all stretching is bad and strength and power athletes shouldn't stretch at all. You see them everywhere. You can, like, every single sport, you can find these kind of myths about training that might be case specific or might just be general guidelines, but then they become like, thou shalt not. I remember we had a ballet teacher that was like, I only had a few classes with her because she's covering, you weren't allowed to drink water in her class because it would put off your center of mass and you would not be good at ballet.
Yeah, well, like, I also did a class once I was a circus person that told me, don't drink during the class because the water will go to your muscles, and that's bad. So imagine that, like, you grow up and you do circus classes and you hear that, and then you make that strong assumption on something that is just absolutely nonsensical. And there's a lot of this happening within all of these various training communities. I remember when I was doing breakdancing too, we had all these weird ideas that just came up because we were a bunch of kids who had no fucking clue about anything, that just started doing things, had heard something, and it's like, oh yeah, you should do 100 push-ups every evening. It's like, oh yeah, that's good. So, and then people started doing 100 push-ups every evening. I mean, people survived, but it wasn't optimal in any sense. So, and I've seen this a lot in circus as well. So it's just something to be aware of, and I think it's very important with critical thinking around these sorts of topics when it comes to absolute statements on whatever is good or bad or injuries or whatnot. Just it's like very few things are 100%.
Yeah. It's also this kind of thing. It's like I suppose it's like bro science. If everyone's familiar with like bro science in bodybuilding, it's like
It's literally
sometimes
that.
it works, but sometimes you're like you must drink your protein shake within 15 minutes of finishing your workout, or else you lose muscles. I know a friend of mine who will remain nameless. He forgot his protein shake, and so he got a taxi home from the gym, which cost him about 15 quid, just so he could get back in time to like not lose his gains.
That is absolutely great.
And so it's it's these things. We have to be careful of these myths. Just to throw it out there, if you want to learn how to develop balance, alignment, active flexibility, passive flexibility, and the handstand all in one go, we conveniently have a course on Handstand Factory called Push that will teach you how to do all these things at once. And it's working very well for the people out there. Hashtag shameless plug. Other than that, that is the end of our questions for tonight's episode. As usual, thank you all for listening. If you have questions, send them to us on Anchor FM so we can hear your voices. Other than that, thanks for tuning in.
Cheers. This time I shall.
There's some kind of like beeping coming across your mic.
Is it?